Margaret was walking straight toward me across the hall, and I'd already raised my hand to wave, to hug, the way we always did. Kristen got there first. "Margaret, what a wonderful evening. I'm Kristen Harris, Norma's daughter-in-law. We're so glad to support the foundation." Margaret glanced at me over Kristen's shoulder, briefly, with that particular smile that means, "Hold on, I'll sort this out." "I know who you are, but I've known Norma for 12 years. She kept our books for free for 3 years while we were getting on our feet." Kristen blinked. "Oh, I see. Norma never mentioned that." "Norma doesn't mention a lot of things." Then came the toast. The foundation director raised his glass and said, "There are people who give money, and there are people who give time and knowledge. Norma Harris is the second kind." The room applauded. I felt Kristen shift slightly beside me. Not a step back, but something like it. Her hand was on her wine glass, and I could see her thumb moving slowly against the stem, processing. Then dinner was announced, and people began moving toward their tables, and the moment passed. Kristen smiled at someone across the room, waved, became herself again. In the car afterward, Daniel driving, me at the window, Kristen beside me. "Nice evening," I said. "Yes." "Strange that you never mentioned this foundation." "You never asked." Silence. "Well," she said at last, "I suppose every generation has its own ways of being useful." I looked out the window. The night city drifted past. Streetlights, a late-closing pharmacy, a couple walking a dog in the rain. There it was. Every generation, its own ways. That meant, "You're outdated, Norma. Your methods are a museum exhibit. How sweet that you tried. How sweet that you got a little round of applause from your friends. That doesn't change what you are." 12 years I'd volunteered for that foundation. Showed up every tax season, stayed late, fixed their filing errors, built them a system that actually worked. Never mentioned it at home. Not because I was hiding it, because it wasn't a performance. It was just something I did. And now it was interesting that you never mentioned it, like I'd been concealing something slightly embarrassing. Daniel said nothing. He was watching the road, and I knew from the particular set of his shoulders that he'd heard the exchange and had decided, as he so often decided, that the safest thing was silence. My name is Norma Harris. I'm 63 years old. For 38 years, I kept other people's money so accurately that not a single auditor ever found an error. 3 years ago, Bill died. A year ago, Kristen moved into my house with her ideas about modernity. And 2 weeks after that evening, she'll say something to me in front of everyone, and I'll start planning a dinner party. The most modern dinner party in the history of our family. Please subscribe. Hit the bell. You're going to enjoy this. The house on Elm Street has been standing there for 41 years. Bill bought it when Daniel was 3 months old. I remember that day. We came to look, the realtor opened the door, and I saw the kitchen with the big window onto the backyard. Just a window, just light coming through old glass, a little warped, throwing a soft, uneven rectangle across the linoleum floor. But I told Bill, "This is the one." And he nodded, not because he understood about the window, but because he understood about me. That was the thing about Bill. He didn't always understand the reasons, but he understood me. We moved in April. I was pregnant with the second who didn't survive. Bill painted the walls himself, badly, unevenly, with drips, and I scolded him for it. And then we laughed, and he said, "At least it's got soul." You can still see the drips in the storage room if you know where to look. I didn't paint over them after he died. I told myself it was because I was busy. That wasn't the reason. We raised Daniel in that house. 3 bedrooms, 1 bath, a backyard that never quite grew grass the way I wanted it to. Daniel's height penciled on the kitchen door frame from age 3 to age 17. I painted over those when we repainted in 2008, and I regretted it the moment the roller passed over them. Some things you only understand as losses. For 38 years, I went to work, kept other people's money, came home, fed Daniel, checked his homework, made soup, paid taxes precisely on time. Not one late filing, not one missed deadline. My colleagues said I had a head like a computer. I didn't argue, though honestly, I just had the habit of doing things properly. That's not a gift. It's a choice you make every morning when you'd rather stay in bed. Bill died 3 years ago. A heart attack, fast, at 4 a.m. I made it to the hospital in 22 minutes. I remember the clock in the parking garage said 4:46. He was no longer talking. He held my hand. The nurse said something kind. I didn't hear what. He held my hand, and then he didn't. And that was all. The first year I didn't change anything in the house. People kept telling me to redecorate, to move things around, to make it mine again, as if it had ever been anything else, as if changing the curtains would change the weight of a Tuesday morning with no one to make coffee for. Margaret said to me once, "Norma, you're living in a museum." I answered, "Museums are warm." She didn't argue. Margaret understands when an argument won't help. Daniel met Kristen around the same time, brought her for Christmas. Beautiful, quick, phone in hand, not rude exactly, but with that particular quality of always being slightly elsewhere, as if she were narrating her own life to an invisible audience, and the current scene was almost interesting enough to pay attention to. She talked a lot and confidently, drank non-alcoholic things, and explained the difference between content and information. I listened. I made roast chicken and green bean casserole. Kristen said the casserole was very classic, which I understood meant old-fashioned, and I smiled and asked if she wanted more. It seemed fine. People are different. They married a year later. I gave them $40,000 toward their first down payment. No contract, just like that. It was my choice, and I don't regret the giving. Only, later, a few other things. The first months, Kristen came over rarely and behaved politely. She complimented the house. She asked about Bill. Once, carefully, the way you ask about a mine you're not sure is still active. She helped clear the table after Sunday dinners without being asked. She sent Daniel to help me when the gutters needed cleaning. Everything was orderly. Then one day she arrived and said they had a flood in their bathroom and asked if they could stay while the repairs were done. I said yes. Daniel said, "Mom, you're the best." That was 11 months ago. The first 3 weeks, fine. They were in the guest room. I was in mine. We crossed paths in the kitchen, ate together in the evenings. Kristen cleaned up after herself. Daniel helped with the heavy things. And then something shifted. Not all at once. Slowly, like a smell. First you don't notice, then you get used to it. Then you realize it's been there for a while, and you've just been pretending it wasn't. Small things. The kind that don't make a scene. The kind you can't point to without sounding difficult. Bill's chair disappeared on a Thursday. I noticed immediately. The chair had stood against the left wall of the living room for 26 years, and its absence was like a knocked-out tooth. Not painful exactly, just wrong in a way you feel with your tongue before you think about it. In its place was a slim wooden stand with a rolled yoga mat and a small succulent in a concrete pot. Very clean, very Scandinavian. Daniel came into the kitchen with the guilty expression he gets when he's already done something and knows I'll be upset, but has decided the discomfort of telling me is preferable to the discomfort of undoing it. "Mom, we rearranged a few things. Kristen says Scandinavian style is about space, minimalism. You need room to breathe." That's Bill's chair. I know, but it's a little what? He looked at the counter, at the window, at a spot somewhere between. Old, he said. I set my cup down on the table, quietly, the kind of quiet that has a sound. Bring it back. I left for the bedroom, closed the door. I could hear them in the living room. Kristen's voice, low and reasonable, something about emotional attachment to objects and processing grief through space. Daniel making small, agreeable sounds. Bill bought that chair in 1994 at a second-hand furniture store on Main Street for $40. He was proud of it. Spent 10 minutes telling me about the construction, the wood, the springs, as if he were describing a piece of engineering. He sat in it every Sunday morning with the newspaper and his coffee and the particular expression of a man who has, for the moment, achieved everything he set out to achieve. The chair was shaped to his back, not metaphorically, literally shaped. The cushion compressed exactly to him, a permanent record of 26 years of Sunday mornings. And now it's in the garage because it doesn't fit the Scandinavian aesthetic. For fuck's sake. I didn't come out for dinner that evening, said I had a headache. They picked out my phone with me sitting right there. The following Sunday, all three of us at the kitchen table. Daniel with his coffee, Kristen with her laptop, me with my tea and my newspaper. A real one, print, which I could tell from small signals they found quaint. Not rude about it, just quaint. This one's good, Kristen was telling Daniel, turning the screen toward him. Big icons, a reading app built in. You can call a cab from the home screen. The interface doesn't require any real learning curve. Good battery? Excellent. And the font size goes all the way up to very large. No squinting. Uh-huh. Mom, do you like it? I lowered my newspaper. On the screen was a phone. 5 icons in primary colors. Font so large the word phone took up a third of the screen. The kind of thing you'd buy for someone who was afraid of technology. The kind of thing you'd buy for someone you thought was afraid of technology. I use an iPhone. Sure, said Kristen, with that patient tone I was learning to recognize, the one that meant she was explaining something to someone who might not quite follow. But this one's much simpler. There's no app store to get confused by, no updates. You just turn it on and it does what you need. I'm not confused by app stores. Mom, she's trying to help. No, she's solving a problem she invented. She looked at me one day and decided I was the kind of person who gets confused by app stores. And now she's being kind about it, and I'm supposed to be grateful. In 2003, I personally migrated the entire accounting records of a 40-person company from paper to digital, spent 3 months building the system, trained 6 staff members, and delivered it 3 weeks ahead of schedule. In 2019, I learned new federal tax software in less than a week, while colleagues 10 years younger complained it was too complicated. I have never, not once in my life, been confused by a piece of technology. But sure, 5 icons, very large font. That'll be just right. I went back to my paper, finished my tea, put my cup in the sink, left the room. Out loud, nothing. The evening at the foundation happened a week after I found the brochures. Kristen had left them on the hallway table. 3 of them, fanned out slightly, the way you'd arrange things to be noticed. Maybe it was casual, I'm genuinely not sure, but they were there. Sunridge Senior Living, comfort and security for active older adults. A picture of a cheerful woman in her 70s doing water aerobics. Golden Years Community, your new home. A picture of a dining room with round tables and motivational quotes on the walls. Meadowbrook Assisted Care, where someone looks after you. A picture of a garden path, soft focus. I stood there for a moment, picked up the Sunridge one, read the first paragraph, looked at the monthly rates, put it down. 11 months. We are 11 months into temporary while the bathroom gets fixed, and there are brochures on my hallway table about where I might like to go next. They're not even asking yet. They're just leaving literature. Margaret called that afternoon to invite me to the foundation gala. I said yes immediately. I needed to put on good clothes and go somewhere I was known. The evening was warm and the room was full of people who had, at various points, needed help and received it from people like me who showed up without being photographed doing it. The kind of room I understand. Margaret introduced me to the new board members. The food was decent. Someone gave a speech about civic commitment that used the phrase, the invisible infrastructure of a functioning society. And I thought, yes, that's what it is. The things that hold things up. Unremarkable until they're gone. Then the toast. Then the applause. Then the car ride home. Every generation has its own ways of being useful, said gently, reasonably, without malice. The most deflating kind of dismissal. The kind wrapped in agreement. Yes, you were useful. In your way, for your time. How lovely. I lay awake and looked at the ceiling for a long time. 41 years in this house. 38 years of work I was good at. A husband I loved and lost. A son I raised. A foundation I supported. A community I was part of. And from where Kristen is standing, all of that is a certain age. All of that is adapting to the modern pace. All of that is something that needs managing, updating, or gently relocated to Sunridge Senior Living, where the water aerobics are apparently excellent. I got up, found my notepad, sat at the kitchen table with the light on over the stove because I didn't want to wake anyone with the overhead. At the top of the page I wrote, dinner. Then I wrote, modern. Then I underlined both words. The family dinner happened the following week. Kristen invited her friends, Ashley and Kate, both in their early 30s, both with that quality of constant low-level distraction that comes from never being fully off their phones. I'd met them before. They were pleasant enough. They talked to me the way people talk to someone's mother, friendly, slightly elevated in volume, with that unconscious pausing that means they're waiting to get back to their actual conversation. I made lasagna, set the table properly, the good china, candles, cloth napkins, the things I do when I want a meal to be a meal. Over salad, Kristen talked about a rebrand she was developing for her startup. She was good at talking about her work, clear, structured, with a genuine energy that I could respect even when I wasn't fully following the specifics. Ashley described a mindfulness retreat she'd been on in Vermont. Kate had opinions about a new development being built near their neighborhood. Daniel was quiet in the way that meant he was having a good time. I refilled glasses. Ashley turned to me at some point the way people turn to someone who's been quiet. The obligatory turn. Norma, what did you do? I mean, career-wise. Chief accountant, 38 years. Oh, wow. For a company? Construction firm. We built about a third of the commercial real estate in this county over 20 years. That's so interesting. Already moving on in her head. Kristen put down her fork. She had a way of putting down her fork when she was about to be kind. Mom is enjoying a well-earned rest now. We try to help her navigate things. Modern technology, keeping up with how everything's changed. It can be a lot to manage at, the pause was brief, calibrated, a certain point in life. A ripple of sympathetic amusement went around the table. Not laughter exactly, more like a fond exhale. Oh, these moms, these older ladies, bless them. Daniel ate his lasagna. I smiled. Let me count for you, Kristen. I learned to use a computer in 1987 when most of your colleagues' parents still thought it was a fad. I filed my first electronic tax return in 1994. I have been on email since before you were in middle school. I manage my own investments. I read the financial section of the newspaper, the actual financial section, not the lifestyle column. I understand compound interest, amortization schedules, and the difference between a capital gain and a dividend. I adapted to every modern pace of life as it arrived, every single time without anyone holding my hand. But please, yes, tell them I need help navigating things while they're at my table, eating my food, on my china. 38 years, not one error, not one. For fuck's sake. Out loud, nothing. I offered Ashley more lasagna. She took some. After the friends had gone and Daniel had drifted to the living room, Kristen and I were alone in the kitchen. She picked up a dish towel, which she sometimes did. I washed, she dried. The sounds of domestic routine. "Good evening," I asked. "Really nice, thank you, Norma. The lasagna was genuinely wonderful." "I'm glad." A pause that went on slightly too long. "Norma," her voice shifted. Careful now, organized, the voice she used for things she'd prepared. "I've been wanting to talk to you about the future, about practical things. Daniel and I have been thinking, and we feel like it would be good to sit down and—" "Not tonight," I said. "But there are things we really should—" "I know there are. And we'll talk about them. Not tonight." She put down the towel, folded it over the edge of the sink, left the kitchen without another word. The future. Yes, I know what the future looks like from where you're standing. It's on the hallway table, glossy, with a woman doing water aerobics on the cover. I've read it. I know the monthly rates. But we'll talk about it when I say so, not before. The notepad was on my dresser. I opened it to the dinner page and wrote, underneath the word modern and the 2 underlines, QR codes. Then, timer. Then, feedback form. I looked at the list for a moment, then I smiled for the first time all evening. I called Rita the next morning. Rita and I have been friends for 40 years. We met in '83 at an accounting certification course. She sat next to me the first day because I had a pencil and she didn't, and we've been in each other's lives ever since. She's been married twice, both times to men she described with hindsight as expensive lessons. She has no children, 3 cats with complicated personalities, and the kind of absolute directness that some people find offensive and I find like oxygen. She listened without interrupting. That was unusual for Rita. Then, "Norma, what in the actual hell are you staying quiet for?" "Because reacting isn't a strategy." "And what is a strategy?" "Something I'm developing." "You've been developing for 11 months. It takes time to develop something worth deploying." A pause. I could hear one of her cats, probably the gray one, Biscuit, moving around in the background. "You've got something," she said. The tone had changed. "Maybe." "Norma." "Rita." "Don't Norma Rita me. You have that voice. The one where you've already built the spreadsheet and you're just waiting to show it to the room." I looked at my notepad. The page had grown considerably overnight. I'd been up at 5. "Can you come Sunday week?" I asked. "For dinner." "What kind of dinner?" "A modern one." Silence. Define modern. "The menu will be accessible via QR code only. There will be a presentation before each course. Each speaker at the table will have 90 seconds, timed." Rita said nothing for a full 10 seconds. I counted. "There's a Google form for feedback," I added. "One of the questions asks guests to rate the hostess on a scale of innovativeness." "Oh my God," said Rita, very quietly. Then, slowly, with something that might have been reverence, "Oh my God, Norma." "Bring your phone. Good camera." "I'll come Saturday," she said, "to help cook." "Good." "Norma?" "Yes?" "I just want to say, on record, that you are my favorite human being alive, and I would follow you into any war." "Come at 10. I'll have the coffee on." I spent 3 evenings on YouTube. The first evening, I watched videos about agile stand-up meetings, the history of the 90-second speaking limit as a productivity tool, and something called facilitated dialogue frameworks. I took notes in the notepad with a blue pen, underlining things that seemed useful. Timer, 90 seconds per speaker. Firm, non-negotiable. No, just one more thing. Written down. Underlined twice. Parking lot methodology. A designated space for topics that exceed the agenda. Documented, not dismissed. Revisited if time permits. Written, circled. Facilitator controls the room. Facilitator's role is neutral but directive. I paused the video. The man explaining this was about 32 and wore a headset and kept saying, "Lean into things." Facilitator. That would be me. I wrote it in the margin, underlined it once. On the second evening, I opened PowerPoint. I used to make presentations at work, year-end financials, audit summaries, budget proposals. The habit came back quickly, the way physical skills do. I spent 2 hours on 12 slides, 1 slide per dish, on each: name, ingredients, caloric content, local sourcing information, sustainability index, carbon footprint per serving. For the soup, 0.3 kilograms CO2 equivalent. Sustainability index, 8.4 out of 10. For the main, more complex, required cross-referencing. I spent an additional 45 minutes ensuring the numbers were accurate. On the third evening, Kevin came over. Kevin is my sister's son, 26 years old, works in software, has the particular quality that I find rare in people under 30. He listens to what you actually say rather than what he expected you to say. I called him because I needed technical help and because he would understand what I was doing without needing an explanation and without trying to talk me out of it. I showed him the notepad. He read it, looked up. "Aunt Norma," he said, "this is simultaneously the most organized and the most unhinged thing I've ever seen." "I'll take that as a compliment." "It was one." He turned back to the screen. "Okay, QR codes are easy. Google Forms, give me 20 minutes. Do you want the feedback form to auto-compile responses into a spreadsheet?" "Obviously." "Obviously." He was smiling now. "Do you want individual scores to be visible to other respondents or only to you?" "Only to me. For the innovativeness question." "Right." He typed for a while. "Do you want the parking lot to be an actual physical notepad or a live updating shared document?" I thought about this. Physical notepad, more visual. Agreed, more theatrical. I prefer procedural. "Sure." He grinned. "Aunt Norma, can I come? You've been on the list since I wrote dinner at the top of the page." He made 3 extra QR codes for redundancy. Bought a compact Bluetooth speaker for the binaural beats. Found a royalty-free track labeled Deep Focus, 40 Hz gamma waves, scientifically optimized for cognitive performance. I read that into the agenda, under ambiance notes. "Should I put the speaker somewhere subtle?" he asked. "No, somewhere visible, with a small card that says what it is." He considered this. "Right, so it's clearly intentional. Everything is clearly intentional. I sent the invitations over 3 days. To Daniel and Kristen, I said, I'd like to host a dinner, something a little different. Feel free to invite Ashley and Kate if you like. Daniel said, Sure, Mom, sounds fun. Kristen said, How different? And I said, You'll see, with a smile that she could read however she chose to. To Margaret, I said, Come and observe. She said she wouldn't miss it. To Rita, I said, Saturday, 10 o'clock, bring comfortable shoes. She arrived at 9:45 with 2 bottles of wine and a lemon cake and the phrase, I haven't been this excited since my second divorce. We spent Saturday in the kitchen. Rita cooked. She's better at it than I am, always has been, though I'd never say so in front of her. I handled the logistics. QR codes printed, laminated where needed, placed. Presentation reviewed twice. Google form tested with Kevin via text message. Speaker positioned on the sideboard with a small card. Ambient audio, gamma wave, binaural beats, 40 hertz, evidence-based cognitive enhancement. Norma, said Rita at one point, without looking up from the chicken she was seasoning. What if it's too much? Too much how? Too pointed. What if she cries? I thought about this seriously because it deserved a serious answer. If she cries, I will stop, I said, and we will have a real conversation. But I don't think she'll cry. I think she'll be annoyed, and then I think she'll understand something. What if she doesn't understand? Then at least I'll have had a very efficient dinner party. Rita laughed, went back to the chicken. After a moment, You know I support you completely. I know. I just want it on record that if this goes sideways, I was helping cook and had no prior knowledge of the plan. Duly noted. That's a lie, but noted. Kevin arrived at 5 to help with final setup. He tested the speaker. He checked that every QR code scanned cleanly. He pulled up the PowerPoint on the laptop and ran through the slides one more time. Final slide looks good, he said. The innovativeness question is going to cause a scene. That's the point. I know. He closed the laptop gently. Aunt Norma, I'm genuinely proud of you. Wait for the parking lot segment. There's a parking lot segment? There's always a parking lot segment. They arrived at 6:30. Daniel, Kristen, Ashley, and Kate. I'd also invited 2 neighbors, Diane and Paulette, who'd known Bill and who I trusted to be amused rather than confused. Margaret, Kevin. 10 people at the table. At the front door, taped at eye level beside the doorbell, the first QR code. Below it, in 12-point Arial, please scan to access the evening agenda before entering. What is this? Kristen asked on the doorstep. The program for the evening. Scan it with your phone. She scanned it. The document was 4 pages. The first page was the agenda with timestamps. The second was a table of courses with estimated delivery times. The third was the table layout and seating assignments. The fourth was the feedback form link and an explanation of the parking lot methodology. Ashley, reading over Kristen's shoulder, made a sound that wasn't quite a laugh. Not amused, genuinely uncertain what she was looking at. Norma, this is extremely organized. Thank you. Please come in. Each place at the table had a small folded card with the guest's name and a QR code for the menu. No printed menus. I'd removed them that morning when I'd briefly had second thoughts and then decided against them. The menu was digital only. The seating had been generated by a randomization tool Kevin had set up. Kristen's name had not appeared in the pre-registration form because she'd either missed my message about it or, more likely, assumed that the pre-registration was optional or that the seating would obviously just be whatever was natural. "Your seat is the technical reserve," I said, indicating the chair at the end of the second section of the table. "The technical reserve?" "For guests who didn't complete pre-registration before the deadline. It's the standard procedure when there's an unconfirmed RSVP. You're still very welcome. It's just the seat that remains after the confirmed assignments are placed." Kristen looked at Daniel. He was reading the agenda on his phone with the expression of a man who has wandered into a situation he doesn't fully understand, but isn't ready to admit that yet. "Daniel, it looks really thorough," he said. And then he glanced at me, and I saw it, just for a second, the beginning of a smile that he immediately rearranged into a neutral expression. "Thanks for doing all this, Mom." "Of course." The first course arrived with a presentation. I waited until everyone had been seated and poured. Then I picked up the small remote Kevin had bought me, presentation clicker, $20, wireless, and pressed the button. On the wall behind the sideboard, a slide appeared. "Root vegetable soup with aromatic herbs." Below, a photograph, clean and well lit. Then a column of details. Ingredients. Source: Madison County local farms within 40 miles. Calorie count: Sustainability index, 8.4 out of 10. Carbon footprint: 0.3 kilograms CO2 equivalent per serving. At the bottom of the slide, in smaller text, "Prepared today, no preservatives. Please enjoy." The room was quiet for a long moment. From the kitchen, a sound. Rita, who had taken her position as serving assistant, had apparently found something difficult to suppress. "Norma," said Daniel, very carefully, "this is quite something. I thought it was important for everyone to be fully informed about what they're eating." "That's a modern value, isn't it? Transparency, traceability." Margaret had her napkin to her lips. Her shoulders were doing something. Diane, my neighbor on the left, leaned over. "The carbon footprint is really quite good," she said, entirely seriously. "My daughter-in-law is very concerned about carbon footprints." "Excellent," I said. "There's a breakdown per dish. The chicken is slightly higher, but I've included offsetting notes." I ladled out the soup. The timer appeared with the main course. After the soup, another slide. The roasted chicken and vegetables. Sustainability index, 6.8. Carbon offset information in footnote. Rita and I cleared the bowls and brought out the main plates. The table had relaxed somewhat by then. People were eating, talking. The binaural beats hummed gently from the sideboard. The mood was cautious but warming. Kristen was talking about her startup. She had a particular subject, a pitch she was developing, a new investor she'd been cultivating, a positioning shift she was excited about. Her voice had that momentum it got when she was in the middle of something she understood well. She was good at her work. I've always thought that, even when I didn't say it. I waited until she was fully in motion, about 45 seconds in, good pace, building towards something. Then I set the timer. The soft signal came at 90 seconds. Signal. Even. Clean. Quiet, but audible. "Norma, wait! I'm right in the middle of—" "There are 10 of us," I said. "If each person speaks for as long as they'd like, we'll still be here at midnight. 90 seconds is the format. Everyone gets the same." Pause. "The what?" "The facilitated dialogue format. It was in the agenda, page 1, section 3. Is there a topic you'd like to flag for the parking lot? I have the notepad here." I held up the small spiral notepad Kevin had helped me label "parking lot" in block letters. Kristen stared at it. No. Perfect. Next speaker, Kevin, please. Kevin, to his immense credit, spoke for exactly 87 seconds about a software project at work, ending with a natural pause that landed right on the signal. He'd been practicing. I'd suspected as much. Margaret talked about the Foundation's new outreach initiative. 60 seconds, concise, appreciative of the time limit. Diane described a problem with her fence in a way that turned out to be unexpectedly funny. Paulette talked about her granddaughter's swimming competition. Daniel described an office renovation with the comfortable ease of someone who knows he can fill any time slot without much preparation. Ashley recounted a story about a hiking trip with 2 strong punchlines. Kate talked about a film she'd seen. Everyone managed. Some managed beautifully. Then Kristen again. She'd had time to collect herself. She started the investor story again, from a slightly earlier point this time, as if she'd recalculated the arc to fit the 90 seconds. She was good at this kind of adjustment. By 60 seconds in, she was in the material. By 75, she was building well. By 80, she was at the thing she'd been trying to get to the first time. Signal. Time's up. Thank you, Kristen. That's a really interesting positioning question. Would you like it noted for the parking lot? Norma. Her voice was different now, still controlled, but with something underneath it. I feel like I'm in a meeting. Oh, that's the idea. I did quite a lot of research into productive dinner formats. There's a whole school of thought around facilitated social meals. Very modern. I found it on YouTube. Ashley made a sound, quickly covered it. Kristen looked at Daniel. Daniel was looking at his plate. His fork was still. His shoulders were shaking, very slightly, in the way of a man who is trying extremely hard not to laugh and is losing. Daniel, said Kristen, it's quite a format, he managed. Margaret no longer had her napkin over her mouth. She had given up on that approximately 3 minutes ago. The feedback form arrived before dessert. I clicked to the final slide. Feedback form, evening evaluation. Please scan the QR code below to access the form. Anonymous responses, estimated completion time, 2 minutes. Your feedback improves future events. I paused a beat to let people scan. The form has 5 questions, I said. The first 4 are about the food and the format. The last one is optional, but I'd appreciate responses. The last question was, on a scale of 1 to 10, please rate your host's overall innovativeness. Margaret read it. She put down her phone. She covered her mouth with both hands. Then she stopped covering it because there was no point and laughed. Out loud, genuinely, the laugh of someone who has just witnessed something she didn't know she'd needed to see. Norma Harris, she said when she could speak, you absolute menace. Diane had her phone out and was filling in the form with apparent seriousness. Paulette was peering at it. Ashley and Kate were laughing. The kind of laughing that means they've stopped being uncertain and decided this was simply wonderful. Kevin had his phone raised. Photo of the slide. He looked at me and made a small nod that meant confirmed. Kristen was looking at her phone screen. This is actually, signal. I'd said it again. Just because the logic demanded it. Time's up. Who wants dessert? Oh, for fuck's sake. Norma, this is, can we just... Around the table, a breath of silence. Then Rita, from the kitchen doorway, said, I feel like I should applaud. And then the room came apart. Real laughter. The whole table, including Daniel, who had abandoned all pretense and was wiping his eyes. Kristen looked around the table, at the laughing faces, at Daniel, at me. She stood up, walked to the hallway, quietly. I waited a moment, then I followed. She was standing at the hallway mirror, not crying, just standing. One hand flat on the wall, phone in the other, face flushed but composed. She had good composure, Kristen. I'll give her that. I stopped a few feet away. The house was quiet from here. Behind us, the sounds of the table settling. Someone telling Rita something. Laughter dying to conversation. "You did that on purpose," she said, not a question. "Yes." A pause. That was cruel. The brochures on the hallway table were unkind. Choosing my phone while I was sitting there was unkind. Telling your friends I need help adapting at my table over food I cooked, that was unkind. She said nothing. I didn't make a scene. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't ask you to leave. I hosted a modern dinner party. You've been explaining modernity to me for 11 months. I took notes. Kristen looked at the mirror rather than at me. "I didn't realize," she said, slowly. "I genuinely didn't realize I was doing those things as a pattern, as something accumulating. I know. I thought I was being helpful. I know that too. The road to the brochures is paved with helpfulness." She made a small sound, not quite a laugh, something adjacent. "I don't actually want you in a home," she said. "I want Daniel to have a life that works. That's what I want. And sometimes the way I go about wanting that is poorly calibrated." Yes. Silence. "Bill's chair is in the garage," she said. "Daniel didn't throw it out. I said maybe the garage for now, and he agreed. I thought it was storage, not permanent. It can come back." "Yes, I'll tell Daniel." I looked at her in the mirror. She was still looking at the mirror. We were both looking at the mirror, which felt appropriate for some reason. "Go back to the table," I said. "Rita made a lemon cake. It's very good." Kristen straightened up, smoothed the front of her shirt, turned toward the living room. Then she stopped. "Norma, the innovativeness score, mine. It'll be in the spreadsheet in the morning." What did I get? I looked at her. "Come back for Sunday dinner next week, and I'll tell you." She almost smiled. Almost. "Deal," she said, and she went back to the table. I stayed in the hallway for a moment, looked at my own face in the mirror. 63 years old, retired chief accountant, widow, owner of this house, 41 years in these rooms, facilitator. I went back to serve the lemon cake. They left at 10:15. Daniel stayed to wash the dishes. He always does this when something has happened and he doesn't know how to open it directly. The washing up is his version of sitting down, a way of staying in the room until a conversation finds him. We were quiet for a while, the domestic rhythm of it. Water, dishes, the rack. "Mom," he said at last. "Yes?" "You are genuinely kind of insane." "I prefer innovative." He laughed, set a bowl in the rack. "The chair," he said, "that was my fault. I should have said no." "Yes, you should have." "I'll bring it back this weekend. Saturday morning would be good." He nodded, dried his hands, looked at me for a moment with an expression I recognized. Not the one that means he's about to explain something, but the one that means he's seeing something. "She doesn't mean it badly," he said. "Kristen. She has a way of optimizing things, organizing situations. And sometimes she doesn't see that the situation has feelings about being organized. Yes, exactly that. I know. And I also know that you're going to need your own space, and that's fine. What's not fine is me being managed out of my own life while we figure out the logistics. He was quiet. You're right, he said. We finished the dishes. Margaret hugged me at the door. Long. Norma, she said, that was magnificent, and I am so glad I witnessed it. You were very helpful. The laughter at exactly the right moments. That wasn't strategy. I genuinely couldn't help it. Rita was last. She stopped in the doorway, putting on her coat. Well, she said. Well, what? Well, how do you feel? I considered the question properly. Like I've balanced a very complicated account, I said. Rita did up her top button, picked up her bag. You're the best, she said, and also completely unhinged. Both things are true. Good night, Rita. Good night, Norma. She went. I closed the door. The house was quiet. My house. The chair came back on Saturday. Daniel came alone, which told me something. He carried it in himself, set it in the corner by the left wall, the window, the light. Almost exactly right, slightly off by a few inches. I moved it after he'd gone. Bill's distance from the window, his particular angle toward the room. There. We drank coffee, talked about nothing in particular. A movie Daniel had seen, something at his office, whether I'd noticed the new place that opened 2 blocks over. 25 minutes of nothing much. No agenda. No timer. When he left, he stood at the door for a moment. She's working on it, he said. Kristen. She's been thinking about what you said in the hallway. Good. She asked me what you got on your own feedback form, the innovativeness score. What did you tell her? I said I'd ask. What did you get? I looked at my son. A 9.3, I said. Average of all responses. He stared. A 9.3. Kevin gave me a 10. Diane gave me a 9. Your friends, Ashley and Kate, both gave me 8s, which I found fair. What did Kristen give you? I smiled. A 9. Daniel put his head back and laughed, really laughed, the kind that takes over completely. It had been a long time since I'd heard him laugh like that in this house. 3 weeks later, they found an apartment 5 blocks away. A good one. 2nd floor, 2 bedrooms, good light in the kitchen. They moved out on a Sunday, methodically, with a rented van. Kristen brought me tulips on the way out, yellow ones. She stood in the hallway with them and said, I'm sorry for the times I wasn't paying attention. I said, I'm sorry for the timer. She said, no, you're not. I said, no, I'm not, but I'm sorry if it was harsher than necessary. She said, it wasn't. We stood there a moment. Then she handed me the tulips and said, I'll see you Sunday. And she meant it. That wasn't a reconciliation. It was something more durable, an honesty, the kind where both people know where the lines are and have decided deliberately to stay. The house is mine again, quiet in the mornings, the kettle, the light through the window, the newspaper. Bill's chair is where it belongs. I sit in it sometimes with my coffee, and the morning light comes in the way it always has, warped slightly by the old glass, that soft, uneven rectangle on the floor. 41 years. Margaret's financial literacy program launched last month. I'm running the accounting section. Thursday evenings, 8 participants, all over 60. We're covering double-entry bookkeeping this week. One of the women said she'd been afraid of numbers her whole life. I told her numbers weren't afraid of her. She laughed. We got through 3 chapters. Kevin built the website. It looks professional. He used a modern font. Last week, Kristen texted me, "Norma, could you look at our lease? I think there's something wrong with the tax indemnification clause. You don't have to if you're busy." I looked at it that evening. There was indeed something wrong. 2 clauses, actually, one structural and one a simple error in reference. I wrote her a detailed response. Every point. The statutory basis, the corrected language, 3 alternative phrasings for the second clause, depending on what outcome she wanted. She wrote back, "This is incredible. Thank you. I had no idea you knew this." I wrote back, 38 years. She sent a laughing face. Then, 9.3 was accurate. I put my phone down and looked at the chair. 38 years. No 90-second timer changes that. And no one, not ever, gets to put it in the garage.